All right, welcome into another episode of the Goodman and Hummel podcast. I'm Jeff Goodman. He's Rob Hummel, and Rob, we get some other people on. I got bored of you, so I wanted to spice it up a little bit. Talking to you is sometimes like talking to the wall, so I figured I'd bring on some people here who would entertain me and educate me and inform me a little bit. And one of those people is well. It's your former college coach who probably made you run many a sprint over the course of your career. Matt Painter.
I deserved it, though. I deserved all the sprints he made me run. But no, I'm looking forward to this. There's a lot to talk about here, so this should be really good.
Yeah, we're going to talk about kind of the state of the game right now with everything that's going on, and it has been crazy over the last couple months. And we've got Missouri State head coach Dana Ford to give us kind of the mid-major perspective a little bit. Paint gives us the high major perspective. Hunter Dickinson of Michigan gives us the player perspective, and Zack Charles, who's worked for a couple agencies and has been a certified agent for the last 10 years, will give us the agent perspective. All right. So like I said, it has been a whirlwind, I think, over the last couple months. I don't know if anybody saw this coming to the extent it has with just all the changes within college basketball, whether it's from NIL, whether it's from the one-time transfer waiver. So I'll start with you, Matt Painter. Of the big question is obviously why are we where we are, number one, and your thoughts of kind of what it's like right now.
Yeah, I would say how we got to where we are with all these things. I think initially started with the waiver process. I think it was so hard, and the waiver process got out of control. Then you throw the lawsuits on top of it, the O'Bannon case, the Alston, a couple others to reference. So those two things together is really what got the ball rolling. The one-time transfer, which I was on the subcommittee for that, I wanted the guardrail of not letting guys transfer immediately until their second year. They could transfer after their freshman year, but they would have to sit. But then they would keep their one-time transfer. So they could still do a one-time transfer just to soften it. Because I just thought with the one-time transfer and name, image, and likeness and COVID all in the same surge, that was so much to take under there. The name, image, and likeness is something that was needed, but it couldn't be in the recruiting space. And that's what I talked about right away. You can't let name, image, and likeness come into the recruiting world on top of the one-time transfer. Then obviously with everything with COVID, obviously that didn't happen and they didn't listen to anything that I had brought up. But I really felt that name, image, and likeness should have started their third semester of school. So your sophomore year, first day of classes is when that would register. Just because it was coming in with the one-time transfer and everything with COVID. I just felt like we had to soften everything and not try to limit anything, but just kind of soften the one-time transfer and make that to where that you have to, go at least 2 years of college before you could use that. And in the name, image, and likeness, or we would be where we are. And now this is where we are. The thing that you have to do when you represent that. So I was a part of the one-time transfer and obviously on a lot of those committees. I thought they were diminishing low to mid-major basketball. I didn't think it was fair across the board. I think if you're at Michigan or you're at Purdue, you're going to get players. They can shake it up how they want. But if you go 100 years at the University of Michigan, they've always had players. If you go look at 100 years of Purdue basketball, they've always had players. But when you get a guy at a mid-major level like a Ron Harper or a Dan Marley or a Hersey Hawkins, man, that's gold. Yeah. That is absolute gold. And that's what it makes. And the part of the NCAA tournament is North Texas and St. Peter's beating Purdue. That's the NCAA tournament. Sure, those teams at the low to mid major might not win the NCAA tournament. We've had a few go to the Final Four. But that's what March Madness is all about, that unpredictability. I don't understand why we've diminished low to mid major basketball, because when you struggle or you don't play, you transfer. Everybody understands that. I'm not playing, I'm leaving. But when you play really well and you're all conference and you're good, now you leave. Well, who stays? So if you're at a low to mid major school, like if you're at a high major school, you can just go and get somebody. It might not be ideal, but you can still have a better chance than a low to mid major to go get anybody. So I didn't think that was fair. The other thing that the NCAA has done is we've really done a great job in growing our graduation rates overall for men's basketball student athletes, but we've done an unbelievable job in the last 10 years of African-American student athletes and their graduation rates. And then it's been unbelievable. Yeah. I don't see how this is helping that cause. I'm not saying it's totally devaluing education, but when you transfer one time, I think that's a manageable deal. I really believe so. But when you're playing at 3 and 4 schools, I don't know if that's manageable from an educational standpoint and what you're trying to do. So when you're making decisions, the reason I bring this up is you can't just sit there and think about Michigan and Purdue. You got to think about everybody. And I didn't think it was right for all these things at the same time, but I really didn't think with the one-time transfer that was fair for the low to mid-major schools in Division I. Not to really talk about, like, it affects everybody. So it affects NAIA, it affects Division II, it affects Division III, maybe not in the same capacity, but it still affects them.
Hunter, I want to get a player's perspective from you. We've even seen guys go into the transfer portal to leverage and get more NIL at other places. You said yourself, NIL was a big part of why you came back to Michigan this year. What's your experience been like with this?
Yeah, for me, I think, NIL was pretty big for college hoops. I think a lot of people complain about how, like the stars aren't staying enough in college basketball. And, I feel like without NIL, I think you would have seen a lot of the top players who've already announced that they're coming back. I think they would have probably, stayed in the draft or at least tested. You see guys like Armando and Oscar and myself who didn't even try to test because, we feel like the situation that we have coming back with NIL and just, another chance to be able to develop, we feel like, is the best decision for us. I think, NIL has been big because I think it's been bigger than, what people expected. Like Coach Painter said, I think, with the recruiting aspect, I think that's made it, a bit harder, for people to kind of legitimize because it's like, the NCAA really didn't want it to be a recruiting pitch, but I feel like nowadays that's one of the first things that college coaches are saying because, I know for myself, if, I was a senior in high school, I'd want to see what I'm getting. You see it on Twitter, Miami, before like the guy even, signed his paperwork, they already had his NIL deal out there. And so, recruits see that, they even had a player on their own team try to hold them for ransom because, he saw the deal and he's like, whoa, like, I'm not getting that. So, and I feel that I understand, like, I probably want to try to go hold Jawan for ransom, but, I would kind of feel some type of way too about it. Like, I think, the NIL has definitely helped college basketball, but I think it also comes with, some negatives that people will definitely try to exploit.
Yeah, I just don't think we were ready for it completely. And the NCAA certainly wasn't ready for it, Dana. Paint talked about it, how the mid-majors are probably the ones that get hurt and the low majors more than anybody else. What's your experience like? You just lost your leading scorer, Isaiah Mosley, to the portal, and he's going straight high major. What's it been like for you and talking to other mid-major coaches?
It hadn't been easy. And like Coach said, things just happen so fast and so hard that you really, unless you were thinking about how you were going to adjust to it, you don't have time to play catch up. And so we really spent a lot of time this past year in our recruiting meetings discussing the fact that we may have an entirely new team next year. And that's ultimately where we're sitting. We signed, I want to say 10 new guys just this year. And like Coach talked about at our level, it's so much more than just what meets the naked eye. Like, for example, this has impacted our budget tremendously. We used to be a program that would go out in the summer and evaluate AAU tournaments and things of that nature and maybe have 6 visits in the fall. Well, now we just had about 10 in the spring. We used to never have that many visits in the spring. From a recruiting standpoint, I didn't attend one single event this past month due to the fact that we had, visits on campus all those weekends. So it's absolutely just putting a huge dent into our budget and in fact going to make us make a decision whether or not we ever recruit in the summer again. Because does it make sense? You know, outside of maybe a local talent that's really good, who else should I go see? But not only that, but like our fan engagement. You know, you've got programs like ours that have a rich tradition. You know, Coach, he used to be at Southern Illinois. They got rich tradition, and a part of that tradition is, you know, growing familiar with the freshman on your team that was maybe a local kid that just, you know, grew into a local legend over the course of his career. And I think, you know, those days, unfortunately, are going to maybe be over for some, but definitely few and far between for others. So there's a lot of different layers to this. But, you know, you have to make a decision. Are we going to be a program that looks at it as a problem, or are we going to be one that looks at it as a predicament? And that's what we've done. We've looked at it as, hey, this is just our predicament. How do we navigate through this instead of figure out a way to maybe try to change it? Because I don't foresee the change coming anywhere near back to where it was. You know, in fact, things could get even more out of hand if the one time becomes a multiple time, right? I mean, how can you manage that moving forward? So I don't think that it was a great idea for everything to happen all at once. Without a doubt, you know, we've kicked this can down the road plenty of times before, and we could have did that again, at least till we got through COVID, and maybe, like Coach said, let's start the NIL, which is something that is definitely a positive when used in the right manner. But to also throw that one-time transfer on top, it just makes it really hard to build a program. You know, like Coach is talking about the North Texas and St. Peter's. You know, those teams probably had guys that had been in their program 2, 3, 4 years and were able to build up a group that could go and beat a Power 5 on a neutral floor. So, you know, you look at our roster next year. We played this year with just 2 seniors, but now we have 10 new guys, right? So that used to be a situation where you would say, hey, we could really just, you know, reload next year. We sign a couple guys, but now that philosophy is definitely out the window.
Zach, you've been a sports agent now for 10 years, and you've worked to build your career up, and you've gone through that grind, and now you might be getting out of the business. And it feels like at this point, there's probably more opportunity for agents, maybe more so than ever, right? Why are you leaving now?
Yeah. You know, when I got into this business 10 years ago, it was about relationship building, right? And kind of like what the coaches said, right? You go, you sit in somebody's living room, you talk to mom and dad, you tell them how you're going to help their kid go from point A to point B, and so on and so forth. And as the game and as the years continued to go by, it became more of a vanity game, right? And who can give the most money off the floor, right? Who had the most clients? Who was given the bigger signing bonuses? What were the perks? Was it a car? Was it this? Was it that? And we can all say, listen, there are programs and there are agents that would pay kids in grade school and high school under the table, and it is what it is. Now it's out, right? Now it's out in the open. And I think we're living in a really dangerous time for this game, right? I think the fact that NIL is now going to be allowed in high school games is very dangerous, right? Every handler is out there now with their hand out, right? Every agent is at 8th grade basketball games telling kids that they can get them t-shirt deals and car deals, and they can't even drive, right? It's a situation where what happened this weekend with the University of Miami should be an eye-opener for everybody, right? And there are a lot of different stories involved, and there are a lot of different takes, and maybe they knew, maybe they didn't know, maybe the kid gave the thumbs up to run the story, maybe he didn't, right? It's pretty hard to imagine that he didn't have any idea that was coming, right? Like, I think it's a good way to save yourself. I think if the two coaches right here, I don't know if you want a kid like that in your program moving forward, right? If you know he's going to enter the transfer portal looking for an NIL deal, right? Hey, I had X amount of dollars on the table at Miami. Now give me X and I'll come here, right? So for some people, it's very beneficial, right? Oscar in Kentucky. If he would have declared for the draft, he wasn't a first round pick, right? So he probably would have fallen somewhere in the 40s. Maybe had to take a two-way depending on what team chose him. So maybe he gets $500,000 taxed, agent fee, dues, everything like that. Now he goes back to Kentucky, gets $3 million, right? I get it.
Simple math.
I get it. But just like Coach said, right? Coach Painter said, Michigan, Purdue, they don't have problems here, right? This ruins the game because exactly what they said, who stays, right? Who stays? And that's the biggest problem that we have here. I think each state having their own law on NIL is problematic, right? You got Texas saying one thing, New York with another one. One school can go, high school kids can get it here. So you're going to start to see parents pulling their kids from Texas to New York to get the bag there. It's dangerous, right? And again, we're going to run into the same issue that we always run into, right? College sports is run by men's basketball and men's football, right? There's nobody going to pay the top women's volleyball player $400,000 to go play at UCLA, right? The fact that maybe the 15th or 16th best transfer in the portal got $800K for 2 years to go to Miami to do what? That's not an NIL deal, right? The NIL was not supposed to be, let me entice you to come play for my school, right? It's supposed to be, hey, let's sell Hunter jerseys in our arena. And when he gets that, when everyone's wearing his jersey, he's going to get a profit share of that because they're buying his jersey. Not let's have, some conglomerate come in with a lot of money and start to create collectives and now say, hey, we have $10 million. Or now UF is building a collective, right? Soon Michigan's going to build a collective and everybody else, right? That's the problem that we're going to run into here. And if we don't put the kibosh on it now, it's going to get younger in the grassroots game. It's going to get more complicated. And the money that's going to be out there is going to be dirty money. And we've seen what happens when that happens.
Yeah, those Clark Francis elementary school rankings really would be important these days. Hunter, let's switch gears a little bit because you're on your third point guard in 3 years. Third point guard in 3 years. As a big guy, that is not easy because you need your point guard to get you the damn ball. The transfer portal for you, when you see it, and again, you've been somewhere, you've stayed somewhere, you've had success. What do you think when you see 1,400 plus scholarship players are in the portal right now?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I knew once I got to college, I was staying there because, my older brother, he played Division I college basketball, and he went to 4 schools in 5 years. And so for me, I knew wherever I was going, I was staying. And I mean, I understand it from a player's perspective. I got friends who, they go to one school and, the coaches gave them promises that they didn't fulfill. And, they got, certain situations happen. And so like, they're trying to move on and, they got to try to find the grass greener somewhere else. But I mean, definitely I can understand where the mid-major coaches are coming from because it's like, you want your players to succeed and be great, but, at a certain sense, you don't want them to be too good to where after 1 year, they're like, okay, well, I'm done with this. I want to go play at a high major. So then my numbers will actually like NBA scouts will actually, pay attention to my numbers more because it's like, if you're getting 20 at mid-major, it's harder because NBA scouts just don't, I guess, compare it as much. And so, I mean, it's hard, but I mean, I feel like, I mean, for me,
when you see I don't love all the movement. All the movement to me, I can't even remember who's where anymore. Where years ago, it was easy when I came, you knew who was going to be there. When Hummel's Purdue teams were there, like you knew who was going to come back. Now I can't keep track anymore. That's, I think, to me, as somebody covering the sport, very frustrating because everybody's just jumping all over the place and there's no continuity.
Yeah, no, for sure. It does feel like it's like free agency out there. And, I think that is one thing, like team chemistry wise, it's hard to get that chemistry because it's like, at least 5 people of your team are going to be brand new from recruiting high school kids or from the transfer portal. I mean, like it's so rare for a team to lose nobody in the portal nowadays because it's just like, kids want a bigger role. Like, nowadays, I guess kids are just having a tough time of really trying to buy into their role or, the development. I feel like nowadays, even on our team, like some kids are struggling to kind of stay with the process and I guess, develop under coaches. It's like 1 year, if it doesn't work, all right, I'm out. I got to go try to find someone who's going to give me that bigger role that I'm searching for.
Hunter, have you noticed that NIL has changed the locker room or even hurt the locker room? Just because now you've got, and Jeff and I were talking before, like Adrian Nunez, last year's team, he's got what, like 1 million TikTok followers, and he's making money off of it, but he also never plays. Has it changed the dynamic at all?
I wouldn't say that, for our team especially. I mean, like you said, like the guy who made the most money NIL wise, didn't even really play that much for us. And so for us, I don't think it did. Like it was, we would discuss it a little bit. I mean, you see like people wearing certain things and, you kind of ask them and you see it on Instagram. But I mean, me personally, like I don't want to, watch somebody else's pocket and ask, what they're making and stuff like that. It's just me personally. But I mean, I don't think it changes the dynamic. I feel like, it should be understood that like if you have a lot of followers and, you're successful, I feel like people should realize that, brands are going to attract towards them more than the 13th guy on the bench with 2,000 followers.
Do you think, Hunter, you're going to have more pressure on you this year? Because I know your dollar figure hasn't come out yet, and I'm not going to ask it, but we know obviously you're making good money this year. Is it going to mean more pressure for you? And certainly like a Nigel Pack, who's everybody knows is getting 400 grand. If he doesn't play well, right? I mean, people are going to talk about that.
I was thinking about that actually, Jeff. I mean, for me, I feel like there's always been pressure on me. I always put pressure on myself when I'm out there to be, the best player I can. And so I think dollar-wise, I don't think that'll put any more pressure on me. I think if anything, that'll relieve me. I'm like, hey, what happens. But I mean, I feel like there's always pressure for me out there, especially, I know where I want to be. Eventually, I feel like I know where I want to end up. And, I put pressure on myself each and every day out there to get to where I want to be. So I don't think the dollar amount that, is placed on me will change that.
I just think it's fascinating because when I was in the NBA, all anybody talked about in the locker room was how much money other guys were making. And now on college teams, that could be the case too. Coach Payne, with some of the guys you had this year that had NIL deals, did you notice that was anything different, or was it much like what Hunter said, it was more of the same?
It was more of the same, and I don't think anybody was over the top at our place. I think we're still growing, even though we had a handful of guys that did things. Obviously, Zach couldn't do it, being from Toronto, and then Jaden had a few things that he did, but he didn't jump into it. He's obviously in a different position than a lot of other people. He just wanted to have a great season, and obviously we knew he was going to go into the draft. So it wasn't a whole lot different for us, but we're still growing. Like we're still, with everything that we're doing, like we're still growing. And, like Dana said, we're trying to adjust and try to make it work under the guidelines of everything.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because somebody said it earlier, state by state, county by county, city by city, it can be different.
Correct.
You just went through a recruitment that's been mentioned here that was very public, ended up being a very public NIL deal. What are you allowed to do? And what is Purdue allowed to do? How do you combat this?
Yeah, well, you obviously we have a group that handles it, and through a company that has businesses that are there, 200 companies, businesses that they can, ping your guys can ping them and go into it. What, you guys really discussed earlier is that collective, and we're not there yet. And that's something where, we've had a lot of discussions. Are they going to have to get to where they cap some things at some point? Is that one of the guardrails they're going to have to be able to discuss if it gets, continues to be egregious?
How can they pay? How can they cap anything now?
I don't think they can. I don't think they can, but just the discussions, and we had these discussions before. And obviously I don't understand, all the laws that go with everything. So you got to be careful in what you say, but just trying to adjust. Like we went through that recruiting process and that happened. We couldn't give them a number because we're not at that point. Like we're not at the point where you can just give a flat number to it. This is just generally speaking, but you just want in recruiting, and I recruited Hunter and did such a good job. He went to Michigan. So, but
I like y'all, coach. I like y'all, man. Yeah, I like y'all. Don't.
There you go. I got you. I'm messing with you. But like, just like I was in his living room or whatever, like I take pride in knowing how he feels because I got recruited and I played. The only thing you ever want is someone to tell you the truth and to be honest with you. So if we get you like there's no surprises. And that's all you want. One of the things for me is I got some guys on our team that have helped us be really good. And giving somebody new X amount of dollars and they're not at that level, right. I'm uncomfortable with that. So we got to get that fixed because like Hunter's a good example. Hunter's a productive player. So nobody looks around and says like, man, Hunter Dickinson's getting X amount of dollars. Hunter Dickinson's been an ass kicker for 2 years.
But they would have had right. Hunter come in with that money. They would have said that.
Yes. But he also was an ass kicker in high school.
Yes, but it's different.
But he was productive. Like,
correct.
See, I'm different because I don't look at talent. Obviously, he's a talented guy, but Hunter's production meets his talent level.
Totally.
If Hunter doesn't score, he can still help his team. He's competitive. He talked about feeling pressure. I think he's choosing the wrong word because pressure is something that you feel when you're not prepared. He had a great high school coach. He had a great AAU program. He's got a great family. He's at a great institution. He's made really, really good decisions, besides the Purdue thing. Really, really
Hey,
good.
Coach, y'all got a good big man too out of it. Don't worry.
No doubt. No doubt.
Got a great point. Hey.
There you go. I'm messing with you. I'm getting my jabs in early.
It's
but
good,
no,
Coach.
but he's been so productive and he's always been a worker. And I just hope this doesn't leapfrog that because this is his time to be really successful and these other guys' times to be really successful. But Rob, as you know, like you don't realize how short your window is. I think he made a really good decision. 20 years ago, some of these guys that are bigger wouldn't be making the same decision. I don't know if Zach would be making the same decision. I don't know if Hunter would be making the same decision because the NBA was different 20 years ago. But now, they have these things in place. And so now, like Hunter said, it's they're making the right decision for them. Like he made the right decision for him. Zachary made the right decision for himself. And so like these things, like we like that piece of it, but you're talking about two productive players. And like now you got to put things together for people that are out there on the wire, so to speak, and they haven't done anything for your program. And then maybe somebody in your program isn't quite at that level with name, image, and likeness yet on your campus. That's where the dissension's that's going to be tough. Now, I think with good cultures, Michigan's got a good culture. I think we have a good culture. I think our locker rooms stay pretty strong because of that. Now, some places where they're moving more and they got all the changes some more, I think that's going to be a lot harder because I always say about a player, like you got your family, you got your religion, you got academics, you got basketball, and then you got your social life. Anytime your social life leapfrogs any of those other ones, you're in trouble. If you're smoking or you're drinking, and that's more important than any of those things I said, trouble is coming your way, man. So you got to keep your criteria and what's important with your family, your religion, your academics, and basketball. It is so hard to be good. So now when you throw something in there, coaches are excited for guys. People don't understand that. We want these guys to get what they deserve, but we also don't want it to take away from them having a great life. And then we're not bypassing some values in there. That's the concern for things, because I don't like the one-time transfer from the fact that the adversity of things. When adversity hits, what do? Do you buckle down and do you work and fight, or do you run? Well, if you've played on 4 AAU teams and you've been on 3 high school teams and 3 colleges, if you're 24 years old and you don't make it and adversity hits you in the face, like, what are you going to do? Well, the only thing so far you've done is change. So we have a landscape of change. So, and Hunter talked about it a little bit, like that was the one thing he was going to do. Man, I make my decision. I am staying there. I just had a guy who fell out of our rotation come in and say, hey, I want to get a Purdue degree. I want to make this right. I had a tough time in a role, and I was just like floored by it. Like, it just kind of shows you his makeup and everything. Doesn't mean like, even if he would have came in and said he was leaving, I understand why he's leaving. He fell out of the rotation. Like, I got that, but he wants to make it right. I just got a funny feeling those guys that battle adversity more times than not, the people that run from adversity. And there's a lot of scenarios that make sense. That's what I get worried about, because like Hunter's decision or any kid's decision to go places should be the springboard, not to have a great career all the time, but to have a great life. That's what it's like. I'm not here with the opportunity that I got to get a scholarship at Purdue. Like that put me in a different stratosphere with other people, especially being around Bruce Weber and being around Gene Katie and how much those guys have done for me in my career.
Go ahead,
Jeff. I was going to piggyback on what those guys are saying at that level about the NIL, how it's affecting guys that are coming in. And for us, we're on the other side of that. So like in our locker room this past year, we had a guy, Mosley, who ended up getting an NIL deal in the middle of the season. And so, to my knowledge, no one else on our team had one. And so I'm not saying that threw a monkey wrench into anything we had, but it was a little bit weird, because now when we're recruiting someone, they're wondering how much can they get. And at our level, you kind of have to do something first before you can prove to be worth that type of situation, because it's just not a norm, right? We're probably not recruiting the guys that like Zach was mentioning that have been getting this since high school or through AAU. It's kind of like, show me what you can do. And then this is something that others may try to do around the program to maybe get you to stay. And that could be a little bit uncomfortable in your locker room, because you basically don't have, it's not a norm in our locker room, right? NIL is not the norm. It's a little bit abnormal considering. And then also when you think about the amount, the rumored amount that was floating around our program this year. So, but then when you go and you try to recruit throughout the spring, it's still a question that's asked, but it's not the first question that's asked, right? It's like maybe like 6 or 7. For us, the first question most of the time now on getting a transfer is playing time. We're probably getting someone that didn't play as much as they wanted to maybe transfer to our spot and look for playing time. So it's just a little bit different at our level, but it's still a new way to operate, and something that we've had to try to navigate.
But I've heard, Dana, that I won't say the school, but an A-10 school, so a school at your level, is paying like 6 or 8 guys $60,000 a piece this year. So what do you do to combat that? Like, what can you do, I guess, is the bigger question.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can do anything to combat that, because what I would imagine is that someone outside your program's got to step up to the plate and be willing to pay that price.
You need John Ruiz. You need John Ruiz. That's who you need.
Right. And so like programs that are not the non-Power 5. Like I used to be at Wichita State. It wouldn't surprise me if someone at Wichita State stepped up and said, "Hey, we're going to jump into this new world." But I don't think anyone at and I'm going to throw a Valley school out, maybe Northern Iowa. I don't think they're going to have anyone step up and say, "Hey, let's do it this way." When we just haven't done it that way. We haven't done it in a way in which
we need to look for that guy, Dana. Do you legitimately need to be searching for that guy with deep pockets that's a Missouri State alum right now?
Well, I don't think by rule we can, number one, but if someone were to step up to do that, then I don't think we would tell them no. But at the same time, it's such a new world for us. Like this whole NIL, which is ultimately turning into pay for play, right? This is really a new world for us. And I'm not saying that it's not new for Power 5s, but maybe it's been in a different manner, but for us, what we've traditionally been very good at is what all of this is now taking away when you think of the portal and NIL. And that's just a process of development over time. And ultimately that's how when I say I'm talking non-Power 5 mid-major schools, we have been a bootstrap type of level, and so that's kind of trickling down, but it's almost opposite, because it's one of those things that can almost become uncomfortable if one person in your locker room's getting it and no one else is.
Coach Ford, everyone said we don't want pay for play, but isn't that what we have?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that's ultimately what you're saying this is, right? And for the life of me, I'm not understanding how come so many people are surprised by this. When you think of the way that it was brought to the table and implemented, I'm not sure how you could expect teams not to go about it in the way that they are. And so, I like Zach's point earlier about what the intention was, but when you do things without guardrails, it's just very challenging to not get those innovative minds that think outside the box. And, like I try to tell parents, how I try to explain it is, you're not going to build an interstate and not put a speed limit out there, because ultimately you're going to have people going their own speed, doing their own thing. And there's no patrolling, and you're just going to have chaos. And that's what we have right now is just chaos, because whether we want to call it that or not, that's the bottom line. Whenever you can get someone and entice them with some type of monetary deal to come and be a player for you, you're ultimately saying, come here and play, and this is what you'll get paid. And right now with it not being any type of guardrails, who's to say it's wrong? Who's to say they're supposed to monitor it? And to be quite honest, I don't know what to think about it, to be honest, because I've been in a lot of living rooms where young people and their families, they need help. And so I've seen that side. And then, I've been in living rooms where maybe, this person doesn't need that. But to just put things in without the guardrails, I'm not surprised by where we are. And I don't want to say I'm afraid of where we're heading, but I don't know where we're heading. And this could become a lot bigger deal than what it is currently now. And I'm not very confident that we're going to put in guardrails. That's probably a whole nother level of this.
Zach, I'm going to start with you, and then I'll go around the group to ask everybody this. But from your perspective, and from an agent's perspective, how do we fix this?
It's a great question. I mean, to what Coach Ford just said, I mean, the mid-majors get killed here, right? Because to his point, right? Let's say a transfer kid wants to go, right? And all they're saying is, a booster comes to him and says, hey, if we can get, Hunter, we'll give him $50,000, right? And he says, okay, great, kid's going to come. Now look at the rest of his locker room. Now, what do we get, right? What do we get? And that's where it becomes problematic, right? Because as he said, the mid-major was a developmental game right there, right? It was someone that wasn't maybe playing at Purdue or Michigan that wanted a star role, went there, helped lead to the tournament, and so on and so forth. Like, what's the incentive right now for the mid-majors to win? Right? Because they're just going to lose everyone that they have. So I think the NBA Players Association has to get involved to a degree. I think the NCAA has to quit with this NCAA certification, right? It's if somebody wants a kid, they're going to get a kid, right? And they might be safer by not having it, so kids don't just jump to Clutch and go, right? Clutch isn't NCAA certified. They don't need to be, right? Because the kids that they're going to sign are probably going to go straight to the draft and not going to advise them. And even if they were, they'd advise it through the table, through the back channel, some way, somehow, right? It is what it is. It's time to call it out, right? And, I've met all the agents. They're all great people, right? There are good people. There are shady people.
I'm not sure I'd say all. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd go all.
Right.
Most.
Listen, as I tell every parent, we all have pros and cons, right? There's some people that are better at some things than others. Everyone's been fired. Doesn't matter who you are. But at the end of the day, first of all, I don't think we should ever report what these kids are making out in the open, right? I think that was a dangerous thing.
Well, and it was one guy. It wasn't Miami. It wasn't the kid. I mean, you almost feel bad for Nigel Pack a little bit that he's the guy who got thrown out there because of John Ruiz.
Right. He threw that out, and that led to the whole Isaiah Wong thing, right?
Right.
The Isaiah Wong thing was a blessing in disguise, right? Because I think we're having this conversation. Yeah. I think when everyone saw the Nigel Pack number, I was like, whoa, okay, he played at Kansas State. He was solid, but they're Kansas State. No, don't get me wrong.
Coach got fired. Coach got fired.
Right. And, you know, it's different than when you go play at Duke, right? I don't know if he would average 17 and a half at Duke. So at the end of the day, I think it's a dangerous game because now agents, the question is who do you trust, right? Who do you trust? Because now if you're getting 20% on an agency fee for a transfer portal, right? Are you truly going to be advising a kid through the pre-draft process in an honest way?
Good point.
If you think they're going to come back to school, or are you going to use that influence that you now have, funnel them to Miami and get 20% of an $800,000 deal, and then maybe sign the kid in 2 years. And whether you sign him or not, you still made 160 on the deal. So what do you care, right? That's more than you would make for Nigel Pack being in Exhibit 10, paying for his training, paying for this, and probably never seeing a dime because he'll leave you 5 years after he doesn't go anywhere.
I told Hunter, I said, Hunter, be careful. Negotiate that percentage down on that NIL deal. Don't be paying 20 or 15%.
Shouldn't be. And the truth is we have to figure out if we cap the agents' percentages, and I'll probably get slammed by a bunch of peers, but it's okay, right? If you cap the percentage, now you're going to, get that honesty a little bit back into place. I mean, I think if that's the case, why wouldn't Paolo, I mean, granted, he'll be a top 3 pick. Why wouldn't he go make $30 million next year at Duke? Right? He's not going to make that in his first year in the league.
Right.
Okay, so he'll be 20 when he goes to the league, and he'll still be the number 1, 2, 3, or 4 pick in 2023. Right? So it's you need a czar. I think. Who is that going to be? I don't know. Is it going to be a college coach? Probably not. Is it going to be someone from the Players Association? Probably not. Right? We need education on what we can and cannot do. And I think you need someone that's not afraid to take the challenge, right? You got to call people out. You got to bring the facts to the table, and you got to say, agents, stop being irresponsible.
I go Painter. I hereby nominate Matt Painter for the czar of college basketball. He will retire tomorrow. He'll pull a Jay Wright. He'll retire tomorrow. We'll get some NIL money for you, Paint. We'll pay you. We'll pay you more than you're making now at Purdue, and you're out.
There you go.
I second that. Get him out of here, Coach.
I deserve that, Hunter. I deserve that one.
But that's that. You need a czar to take control and really be able to work with all sides to make sure that the kids at the end of the day are getting the right advice on whether to go pro, transfer, or really just stick it out, or else you're going to have a free-for-all and nobody's going to win because you're going to lose the innocence of college basketball.
Yeah. Zach, it's a great point. Like we've had in 17 years, we've had nobody make a wrong decision about going pro. And like we really worked hard. We've had 3 guys leave early, Caleb Swanigan, Carson Edwards, and Jaden Ivey, and they all should have. And so like everybody that's supposed to come back have come back. It's what they want to listen to. There's people always say, oh, you're listening to the wrong people. Like, no, there was 80-90% of the people were telling them the right things. They just chose to listen to the 10 to the 20%. And that happens a lot, and you can't control that. Well, now I love the avenue that they have now. Like you can't let your ego get in the way, especially when you think you were going to leave. You got to take a step back and say, okay, what's the best thing for me? Not what I want to do. And that, I think we're seeing more people do that. So I love some of the avenues, like the guys going in the G League and playing, or the guys going overseas or whatever. People look at that and frown. It's like, it's their choice. Right. Like they should be allowed to do what they want. And that's not hindering them, in my opinion. People say, well, you're replacing, your college education. Those guys were going to go to college and play 1 or 2 years. Like they're probably not going to come back. If that's the way you are, and that's the way you're wired, that's the way, or that's just how good you are.
Well, some kids don't love college hoops. Like Hunter loves college. He loves the college experience, right? Kofi Coburn might not have liked the college experience quite as much because he probably could have gotten similar money as you, Hunter, but he chose to, you know what? I'm going to move on at this point, right, Paint?
Right. Yeah, I love the avenues that we have They got so many avenues now. Like, I like the avenue when you're a good player and what you can do. But like now the guys that are struggling or doing things in college or whatever, sometimes the avenues that they choose, like, you just want what's best for them. And we've given them so many opportunities to move from things. When you move from things and it's advantageous for you, you know, that's a great thing. That's fabulous. But when you're just running from something, if you can't dribble with your left hand at Purdue, you can't dribble with your left hand at Michigan. You like, if you can't, like, you got to get better. Like, you know, you talked about some guys that don't play or, you know, whatever. It's like, you're getting some guys that are now kind of touching all these, you know, different aspects, but hey, you got to still be in the gym and you still got to be better than the guy in front of you. Like, let's don't get away from some of those things. And there's just a lot of things and a lot of choices for these guys. And some people look at that aren't involved. Any politician that pushed this through, any like NCAA member, anybody that's an agent, they just need to come and coach for a year. I always say that about officials and coaches. Like, coaches should go and officiate, players should go and officiate. All right, for 1 year. And officials should come and coach. And I think we would be a lot better in our positions, especially dealing with each other, because we'd realize how hard each other's profession actually is. Well, this right here, a lot of people are talking about this. So like when Hunter Dickinson speaks on something, man, I'm listening. You know, when Dana Ford speaks on this, I'm listening. When Zack is speaking on, I'm listening. They're in the trenches and they understand. But who's listening to us? Like, we're listening to each other here, but none of us are making the rules. Like, we got to do a better job. And I'm on a lot of committees. We got to do a better job of listening to players. And then the one thing about players that's different, and people look at you when you're old like you never played. Like, teenagers don't run families. So when Hunter's 16 years old, he's not running his family. Okay, you got to understand that. Like, middle school kids and high school kids don't run families. It just doesn't happen. What their opinions in college basketball is really, really important because they're in the trenches, but they can't run things because they don't have 30 years in coaching. They don't have the thing that coaches want is they want what's best for student athletes. It gets lost because it gets so competitive. But we just want what's best for our players. And that's something that we got to keep listening to players and their perspective. But at the end of the day, coaches like we have two coaches on the basketball oversight committee. One of them's now not on anymore, Conzo Martin. At the D1 council, there's no coaches. And then when it goes up to the presidential is where it gets voted on, or if it doesn't, the D1 council, and there's no coaches on those committees.
That's ridiculous.
So we're sitting here fighting, and it's just our opinion. People say, oh, you're on the basketball oversight committee. I'm like, yeah, we make suggestions. We do straw votes. We chew on things, but at the end of the day, we're not making decisions, but coaches aren't in that room. We got to get to where we're doing some things because we're not trying to knock off anything that is right for student athletes. We're trying to help student athletes and we're trying to help our game. So that's
just a question, Coach. How do you get on the presidential committee? How do they no one knows?
There's presidents get on there. There's a handful.
It's only university.
Yeah, there's a handful of other
Rob,
people.
how did Mark Emmert become the president?
I don't know. I'm not sure. He just was one day.
You can probably figure it out. You probably figure out what happened there.
Well, my question is then how do we get coaches on there? Like that doesn't make any sense.
I keep asking. I keep talking about it because
sorry, that sounds like a stupid ass question. But
I don't know. It's a very logical question. And it's something that we keep asking and talking about because we're getting feedback from players and it really helps us. But we also have to understand, like, that's the reason I said that about families and stuff, just because, you know, my mom used to always talk about, you haven't lived long enough. You haven't made enough mistakes to know what you're doing. And people that's why the old wise man, you know, you sit there and you listen to your grandfather, or whatever, and you think, oh, grandpa, here we go again. But he's just trying to help you. He's probably already made the mistake and your dad's made the mistake and they're trying to stop you from making the mistake. So like those things are important, man. Like we have to do a better job of really getting the coaches and listening to what's going on so we can, you know, so our game doesn't, you know, get punished here.
Speaking of old wise men, Hummel, we haven't really heard from you in your perspective. so far as the grizzled veteran, the former player who played 8 years in college basketball, who's now doing TV work, who honestly, like everybody else has kind of talked to you, but I'd like to know your kind of take on what you would do or what you would like to see done.
Well, I just think it's such a complicated issue. Like, I think the players should be able to make money. Like, I think it's great that Hunter's got this deal. I think that when I played, you look in the crowd, there's a bunch of 33 Purdue jerseys, and they're telling us, no, that's not Etuan Moore's jersey. Hell yeah, it is. Like, it definitely is. So I think that there are some really good things that are coming out of this. I think the fact that the guardrails have not been put into place. I just don't understand how you could assume that this wasn't going to happen because of the fact that, we don't have any rules. There's like 2 rules and none of them are being followed. So my question now is, how do you get it back under control? You can't cap earnings. That's a lawsuit immediately. Do we need like a players association to like collectively bargain? I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what the answer is. I think it's a very complex deal. I'm thrilled the players are able to make money. I think they should be able to make money and have camps, do virtual Zoom basketball lessons, sell t-shirts, whatever. I'm all for it. I guess I was naive to the collective issue.
Yeah.
I had no idea that would even be possible. I think even then hearing that the donors get tax write-offs and the players don't really have to do anything. I think when I was thinking NIL, it's like, hey, you have a car deal, or you're there for the local pizza place, or
Rob, I said this to you.
And at the highest level, like, okay, Zion Williamson could get his own Nike deal, like, because he could be that type of marketable athlete. But I think I'm shocked to see the way that some of this has gone down, and maybe I was just naive on those things.
Listen, I've been saying it for a year now. All you got to do is find your boy, right? You're a head coach. Like I told Dana, go find somebody at Missouri State who wants Missouri State to be really good. And then you just drop a piece of paper, drop it on the floor. Here are my recruits. There they are, right? There are my recruits. I didn't give it to you. That's my list, though. I mean, come on. This was so easy to figure out. Loopholes, right? Here's another one. Guys are going to start playing bye games. If I'm Missouri State, how many bye games you play right now, Dana?
Just 1.
My guess is if I'm you, I'm playing 5 in 2 years. Not this year. Your schedule's probably already done. I'm playing 5, and I'm saying that extra, I don't know, $300,000. Let me keep it. Let's figure out a way to get that. And again, I know you can't comment on this, but I'm saying all those mid-majors, that I'm going to look for creative ways to figure this shit out. And that's all this is going to do right now. Hunter, we got a few more minutes here for everybody to go around the room here a little bit on, I don't know if how to fix it is the right word. Because again, I think there's part of it. I mean, right now you're going to look at your bank account in a couple months and be like, fix it. Fix what? I mean, this is great. So, and I don't blame you. I want you, who has, again, like Paint said, you have produced at the highest level. You've taken your team to the NCAA tournament, deep in the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago. So I don't know if fixed is the right word. What would you change?
Yeah, I think it's easy from a player's perspective. Like, shoot, I mean, keep it going. Like, we're the ones benefiting from it the most. But I think, the biggest thing that I think would help is, trying to limit that transfer portal as much as possible. I mean, the freedom of movement that players have nowadays. I mean, even they say it's a one-time thing, but you can transfer twice, 3 times. Like, there's so many ways to finesse it nowadays to where players can. I mean, you've seen Teddy Allen; he's better be at his 6th school, and he's not using the one-time transfer portal. Like, I think so many guys are able to get around the rules to where I feel like finding out more of a structure for the transfer portal would help keep guys longer at schools like Missouri State to where they're able to, continue to develop there, and he doesn't have to try to get 10 new guys every year. But in terms of the money and paying, especially in the high, Zach was saying, the agency business and the grassroots business is, I think, one of the craziest and dirtiest places in the history. Like, I mean, people are so naive to think that, stuff wasn't happening before NIL. I mean, you're not getting Zion Williamson at Duke for free now. Like he didn't turn down that much money at Kansas and a job for his parents and all that to go to school for Duke for free. I mean, it just like people are naive to think that, but I mean,
you were ranked what?
Happening.
Hunter, what were you ranked coming out of like top what?
Oh, I mean, hey, the recruiting sites didn't like me. I was probably like top 40, I think.
And without going into who, like, were people offering you money coming out of high school? Not really.
Okay, I'm not gonna say not me. They found other avenues. Like my brother was a coach, so I put that out there at the Matha. I put that out, but like I know guys who were offered money. I know I've heard stories, and I know personal guys who were offered money, and so it was happening. It's just now it's legal. And I think one thing that people don't realize is like the money was always there for Nigel Pack to get 400,000. Like Ruiz had that money, but instead of giving $10 million to Miami this year, he's given $9 million, and he's keeping $1 million for actual players. And I think that's the biggest thing that people are missing. Like instead of Clemson football getting $180 facility, they're getting $170 million facility, and they're just using $10 million to get players. Like the facility is going to be the same facility, but just a little bit less nice. But they're going to be able to get 20 more 5-star players from that. And so I think like the money's always been there. It's just being able to get to the players instead of getting
practice facility,
to help the players eventually.
Right, another
Hunter,
board
real quick,
practice facility.
Hunter, how much did you have to seek out these deals, or were you able to have like a dad or an agent? Like, has it been challenging to do, or has it pretty much come to you?
Yeah, I don't think Michigan's been the best with that. I don't think we're, the likes of the SEC or anything like that, where I feel like they've got NIL down to a science down there. We're pretty conservative with this thing. We feel like, I feel like I've spoken out against, Michigan's NIL approach, but, it definitely was hard for me last year. I had, a company or two reach out on my behalf and got me, a good amount of my deals. I feel like in terms of like donors and stuff like that, there wasn't much of that because I think the way Michigan structured it, like people didn't know how to do it. Like they didn't know how easy it is just to be like, here, come, to an appearance and you can make X, Y, and Z dollars, or you can just even post on Instagram and stuff like that. I think this year, Michigan's starting to realize that, you have to fully jump in on this thing or you're going to be way behind. And so I think it'll be easier as time gets on. But right now it's kind of hard, I'd say. I have to hire a marketing team and stuff like that just to make it easier on me because I know, during the season last year, like it's hard to just focus on basketball for sure. I mean, with NIL deals and, you have so many, I guess, like requirements and stuff like that. People like you're getting contracts sent to you. Like you're trying to read through them. You're trying to send them to a lawyer to look at. And then, you have the requirements of posting on certain days.
What are they? Like, Hunter, give us a kind of a little bit of an idea of what you have to do for some of these things.
Like for Outback, they had me come to a photo shoot and then they wanted me to like take some of my teammates out. I ended up taking my managers out to a dinner and paying for it with the money that they gave me and stuff like that. Like posting on Instagram, posting certain stuff that they send me, and like they'll give me, I like it when they give me the caption because it makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
But sometimes, they'll make you like bring it, or, I know I had Xfinity during the NCAA tournament, they had me make a video and send it to them and then send it back. But I mean, it can get really, really, I guess, busy because I know for me, I try to do my best with school and basketball. And, like Coach Painter says, you got that list of priorities that you have. And it's easy. Like, I can speak from, like, it's easy to have that shift when you don't want it to. Things can overlap. And, unless you're really good and you got a good feel for it, it can definitely priorities can definitely get flip-flopped, and you can definitely worry about the wrong things real fast. And that happened to me last year. I was fortunate enough to, be able to get it back in order in time. But I know for some kids, it can definitely affect them and definitely mess them up when they don't want it to.
Is your t-shirt NIL? Like, could I go buy that t-shirt on a website?
At the player's trunk.
Of course
Okay,
you
there
can.
go.
Come on.
At the player's
All
trunk,
right,
man.
players. That's Charles Matthews' website, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Cool.
Hey, Jeff, one of the things, I think that we can do to make this thing better is I feel like, and Coach alluded to some of these things early, we've got to figure out a way with all these things that are going on for it to stop making a mockery of education, because this is still college.
Yeah.
And for most of these guys, if not all of them, the education is what's going to level the playing field. These NIL deals, although some are big, this is not life-changing money that we're talking about. But these are life-changing decisions that we're talking about.
Yeah.
You look at kids that like our guy. I just use him for an example because that's what I know. Our guy had a chance to be the all-time leading scorer at a school and his number to get retired. I mean, that's a life-changing decision to put your name in the portal. Yeah. And I'm not saying he's not going to get money that's going to change his life because it's rumored that he is, but not everybody's going to get that. And, Coach talked about being able to do a certain amount of these things after X, Y, and Z semester. I think is a great idea because you also have guys that are transferring that are not very good students, or they've only taken online classes and now all of a sudden they're transferring because they have a certain GPA, or even when we used to recruit a junior college player, the first thing I would ask is, can we graduate them? Can we help them get a degree? And it's not that we don't ask that question anymore, but we don't ask it first, because you've got an option to play. And then if you don't like it, you kind of just go play somewhere else without having to sit. And so I think the fact that we have taken education and just basically said that we're treating everyone like it's the best thing for them to get NIL, or it's the best thing for them to have the right to transfer. And that's just not the case for most guys. I mean, now I don't think anyone can argue that a great education at some of these institutions we're talking about could ultimately be the best thing for these players. And right now, with all these moving parts and all these options, we tell our guys sometimes, having options isn't always a great thing, because you can make a wrong decision. And I just think that for us not to have any type of process where education, things from a progress towards a degree, a GPA, we have zero of that involved, because ultimately it's still the university where people are making the money. Meaning this, my guy here may have been just worth $50,000 on an NIL. My same guy may be worth $500,000 at Kentucky. Well, the only thing that changed was Missouri State on the front and Kentucky on the front. The player is still the same. So the university still has some type of effect and input on what's being done out there in regards to what your worth is. And if that's the case, if we got the university playing that big of a role, how is education not part of these deals? I can't even comprehend that, because if you're barely eligible, okay, maybe you shouldn't be making X amount of money, right? Or if you can't do this, that, or the other, because I feel like it's just making a mockery of the complete process of what college is supposed to be about. And that's for a student athlete or a common student. College is still about education.
Coach, how do you get your player to maybe see more of the long game? Like, I think about even the rooms I've been able to be in just because someone's a Purdue grad, or even for Coach Painter.
Yeah.
Not that he didn't deserve to be the head coach at Purdue, but it certainly helped him that he played 4 years there and stayed there and had good relationships with these people, whether it's the president, the AD. But I think about the opportunities that I've had since college, and I've been with people that, man, I wouldn't be able to get in that room with those guys if I wasn't a Purdue graduate. How do you make that maybe more of a not priority, but just known that, hey, there is value, especially around here at Missouri State, if you do stick around?
That's a great question. And it's one that we've brought up numerous times, and especially in our recruiting pitch nowadays. I mean, you think about being a graduate, like you just mentioned, from Purdue or Notre Dame or Duke or things of that nature, and what that could do for you, because that's what a majority of our student athletes are going to become. They're going to become alums of some university. Majority of them are not going to become professionals, basketball players, but they're all, or most, will become an alum. And so I think that decision has to weigh heavily on what they're doing. But to answer your question, it's simple. They're all living in sight instead of vision. They're all really worried about what's great for me now, not what's the best for me later. Social media has a lot to do with that. And Coach, he alluded to this earlier. It's parenting as well, because one of the biggest things I've heard is when guys are making these decisions, the phrase it's what's best for me. Well, just because you can put that sentence at the end of something you said doesn't make it what's best for you. And no one can tell me that a college degree from Notre Dame is not what's best for you. There can be some other things that are good and great, XYZ, yes, but that degree from whatever institution we're talking about, that's got to fall under the best for you bucket as well. And so I just think social media has really, really changed the thought process. Coach called it a change culture, and that's how kids are being raised. Yeah. I mean, it's really just quite that simple.
All right. Well, listen, I know we've gone over the allotted. I know Paint's got to go hit the portal. Dan, I'm sure you do too. So
I'm done in the portal. I better be done in that portal, man.
10 guys, man.
All spring, man.
You got no scholarships left. But listen, I think we can all agree probably a little too much at one time, as Paint said at the beginning. I think that's probably the bigger issue here. If we had kind of gone, in stages, it might have been a little easier. And I didn't even think about, you're right, the pandemic playing into it too, because obviously getting the extra year as well. Anyway, want to thank everybody for jumping on board. Matt Painter, Dana Ford, Zack Charles, Hunter Dickinson, Goodman and Hummel podcast. Rob, you did well today. You did well.
Don't I do decent on most of these things?
I don't know. Co-host, this was big for you. I mean,
the roundtable discussions, that's the next step for me for sure.
Paint's got to be proud. I mean, it's like,
I'm sure,
looking at his son here.
I'm sure he's real proud.
38-year-old son, but whatever.
He's probably, man, he's probably saying to himself, Rob's attached himself to a loser like Jeff. What a great job.
What did he do? What the hell went wrong with this guy?
Great job, Rob.
He was on such a good path until he got with this guy. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And state of the game. Maybe we'll do it again next year, and it'll be a little bit easier. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, guys.